And good evening again. We're back again. 6:30. We are awaiting the president of FACDL, the Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and with me again is my co-host April Griffin, and he should be on shortly. And he's going to be talking about a letter that he sent to the governor of our state, Ron DeSantis, asking that to include as priority to receive the COVID vaccination. Those groups already that have been prioritized, he'd like them to add prioritization for COVID-19 vaccinations for those who participate in the criminal justice system, including all attorneys, judges, and defendants. And he just appeared. Hi, good evening. How are you?
Good evening. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So I received an email today from one of my criminal defense attorney colleagues who was trying to spread the word about a letter that you wrote yesterday. It's dated February 1st to the Honorable Ron DeSantis, the Honorable Mark Inch, Secretary of the Florida Department of Corrections, and the Honorable Scott Rivkees, who's the Surgeon General of the state of Florida. You are Mitch Stone, who you are the president of the Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. So you undertook to send this letter. Today, when I read it, I was very happy because a colleague of mine recently, sometime late January, reached out to me and asked me if I was going to look into this. So I'm glad that you took the initiative on behalf of all of us, okay? Attorneys, judges, everyone in the criminal justice system to protect us. And so go ahead and address the public as to why you did this and the reasons and why it's important that we be considered given prioritization for the vaccine.
Certainly, and I appreciate you having me on, Haiti. I think it's a good thing to do to try to promote what we're doing, and essentially in the court system. And the civil court system obviously is important. Everybody can agree with that. You got to get some civil cases resolved, but there's all kinds of different ways of resolving civil cases. The criminal cases really is where the dilemma of the pandemic has presented itself in a way that we really have to get back to business as we knew it. We can do our very best to attend court by Zoom, to have limited contact in live court experiences. But at the end of the day, in order to get jury trials going where we can actually safely conduct jury trials, we have to have the ability to bring in jurors and bring in witnesses. And we have no way of knowing whether or not any of those people are vaccinated or not. I mean, we can't have a vaccination requirement per se for witnesses or jurors because we're bringing them in off the street. So the people that we can affect, that we can protect to ensure a more safe environment inside the courtrooms are the people who are going to be in those courtrooms on a regular basis during the day, through the day, at least with jury trials, for instance. So that would mean the defendants, that would mean the prosecutors, that would mean the attorneys who represent the defendants, and that would mean the clerks and all the other court staff. And then bringing people in for the incarcerated people who are waiting their trials. We have to bring them in, so we need to ensure that they're vaccinated and they're protected. And so what I identified was I thought at some point there's going to be some discussion about that in local government and in state government about who gets these vaccines and whether there should be any priority. Judges, clerks, prosecutors, and public defenders should all be considered, of course, because they're going to do the lion's share of that kind of work. But private lawyers as well, who do the day-to-day criminal defense work, have to be vaccinated in order to safely go in those courtrooms, argue the points to judges and juries, sit next to their clients, and not have the concern about being either exposed or exposing others to COVID.
You know what? And one of the most impactful things that you reference is that, and some of us may not consider, but of course, those of us who are practitioners in criminal defense, but the non-lawyers, they don't probably realize that there are some people that have been incarcerated without the ability to bail out, awaiting what you have referenced as having their trial, and speedy trial has been suspended So they have been incarcerated for over a year now.
Right.
That's been a real problem. And I have a handful of clients. I'm fortunate because of the type of practice I have. I don't have a lot of clients who are incarcerated, but those who are awaiting their trials, they're facing some real problems. And the problems they're facing are that we can't get them out. Either they're under no bond because of the nature of the charges and their records and things of that nature, or they can't make the bond because they just don't have the financial resources to come up with the amount of bail that would be required to get them out, or whatever other reason they can't get out of jail. And I'm sure that there are thousands of people like that across the state in various jails in various counties who are waiting for their time to go to trial. And that's really what we're talking about. At some point, we really need to get these people into these courtrooms. I, for instance, had a client. We were ready for trial. We were in the final stages of preparation. The trial was going to happen April 1st. And I went into the jail to see him on March 9th. We prepared. We did everything we had to do. We were planning on the next 3 weeks of doing a number of other things in court. And 2 days later, everything shut down. And we haven't seen the inside of the courtroom since, with the exception of a Zoom camera and the understanding that we can't have a trial of this nature. It's going to take several weeks to try the case. And so he's not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. The prosecutor's not going anywhere. The judge is not going anywhere. But we can't have our trial because we can't bring in jurors to do this, and we can't have an extended trial like that. They've tried a few trials and with some degree of success, but once they started kind of rolling out the jury trials, we had a COVID issue and we had to shut it all down again. So an extended trial where you're talking about several days or weeks in courtrooms is not fair for the jurors. I look at the jurors and I say, look, jury service is probably is the highest honor in terms of civic duty compared to that of being a first responder, compared to that of serving your country in the military. Serving on a jury is a high honor. You are the person who's going to be participating in an event that's going to decide a case. And we can't have our system of justice without people willing to do that. And so if you have people that you're bringing in and their concern is whether they're being exposed to a deadly virus or not, maybe they have people in their families back at home, maybe they have health concerns of their own, and they're supposed to be listening to the evidence and paying attention to the law and doing all the things that we do in court, and yet they have these concerns. So we need to figure out a way to remove those concerns so that when we bring them in, they're not exposed and they don't have those fears. And that's done by making sure that the people in the courtroom, the personnel, the lawyers, the judges, are vaccinated.
I'm going to ask you two things for those of you who are watching. If you want to call in and ask, may I call you Mitch?
Please do, yes.
And ask Mitch a question, 813-221-9700. I want to ask you two questions. I don't know, April, if you have any questions, but I have two. The other important thing that you did reference in the letter also is clients attorneys being able to go to the jail to meet with their clients. Is virtual visitation a substitute for that, or is that something that is necessary when you're preparing for trial, to be actually like an in-person meeting with the client?
That's been a challenge too, and I think, and as president of FACDL, I've talked to a lot of lawyers about this concern. Some lawyers are just going into the jails and doing the best they can. Some have already been exposed to COVID and have had it, so they're not as concerned anymore. But many of us, who have family at home who are at risk, we have to be a little bit more careful. And so going into the jails is a problem. I've met with our chief judge numerous times, and we're actually in the process of setting up virtual Zoom conferencing for attorneys and clients in the jail, much like the public defender's office has with the Polycom systems. But these are systems that if we get them into every jail in the state, they will be available for use after the pandemic is over. And you can imagine if you're preparing for a trial and you have to go into a little room at the jail and meet with your client, and you don't have all the tools of your of your trade at your disposal, how difficult that is to prepare. If you can tie into a computerized video conferencing system and prepare for trial and meet with your client and have him review evidence, him or her review evidence, show evidence, share screens, do things like that, how much better that will be for the system as a whole. So our hope is that some good comes out of this pandemic, and if that's one of the good things, then so be it. And I know that we've got that in certain counties. I know Palm Beach just put it in. It's fantastic. Duval County is putting it in. And other counties, smaller counties, actually already have it. So we're hopeful that we can get it statewide.
Okay, so joining us also now is criminal defense attorney Chris Parker. And Chris, do you have any questions about this topic? There's a little bit of feedback from your end, Chris.
Oh, is there? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. Do you have a question or you want to comment?
Well, I haven't been here for the entire conversation. I apologize. I couldn't get on until a little bit later. I had baby duties to attend to. But no, the silver lining from all of this is that we may be able to streamline a lot of the processes that were very draconian that we've been using for so many years, at least in the criminal law field. Showing up for pre-trials and sitting and waiting an hour, sometimes two in traffic court, to be called up to ask the judge for another pre-trial date. We've seen that change over the last year because we had to, and being forced to make a change is sometimes the only way that we're able to make a change. So having these systems in place where we can streamline the process is not only vital for us to do now, but hopefully we can keep it in place for the long term.
Okay, and yeah, Mitch, I don't know, since you weren't on at the beginning of the broadcast, he has written a letter to the governor, Ron DeSantis, asking that the persons in the criminal justice system be also prioritized in receiving the COVID vaccination.
I think that's a wonderful idea, and I think it's necessary. I don't think that the public realizes what the backlog of cases will do to us just as a society. I think that they don't see it on a daily basis. They don't understand that if our judicial system isn't functioning properly, what kind of consequences that could have on all of us. I think Haiti can definitely speak to this. We're setting cases for trial. Many cases are just destined for trial. A small percent, some cases just have to go to trial. And what are those people to do if they can't afford to pay a bond? And even if they can pay a bond, they've got this cloud hanging over their head in charges where they don't believe that the state can prove them.
Or that they might actually be innocent.
Yeah. Imagine that, right? Someone's actually innocent. If we don't start closing cases out while they're coming in at a regular rate that they always would, if not more, this backlog is just going to jam up the system for several years, and I don't know how we're going to get out of it without thinking differently.
Right. Okay, this is the last question that I have for Mitch, and you can also respond in April. Mitch, what do you think? Today I saw a colleague of mine on Facebook with a company that is, I guess there was a tutorial on how to do virtual trials. And in the commentary, somebody said, "Oh, good. Like attorneys probably were not going to be wise in waiving an in-person trial versus a virtual trial." What are your thoughts on that? If some courts move in that direction and say, in order to deal with this backlog, let's just start having criminal trials virtually.
Well, and I appreciate your comments, Chris, and I'll answer this question, Haiti. The bottom line is I look at it like we are in a situation where it's kind of like the clogged drain in a bathtub. When we finally get moving, that plug is going to be pulled and everything's going to drain out, and you better be ready to get down that drain with everybody else, because we're going to have judges and court systems just pushing and pushing and pushing. And so lawyers are really going to have to be working overtime to get through this. And there is a major backlog, and there is a big problem because I'm just one lawyer, and I can point to 5 cases that have to go to trial where my clients are incarcerated and they're not getting out. And the only way we're going to finish these cases is by trying these cases. And all of them are going to be lengthy trials. So I know personally that I'm going to be stuck in court for quite a while. I haven't been planning anything for the next 2 years based upon that until I know what my schedule looks like, because I know it's going to be tough to say to a judge, I'm going on vacation that week, so I can't do it. They're going to say, listen, we've got limited time and we've got to get it done. And I think we're going to have the Supreme Court weigh in on that too. I think they're going to probably say, hey, no continuances, you got to get it on. It's time to try these cases. And your clients deserve that too, especially if they're in jail. So we've got all these problems and they're going to start resolving. We're going to get through this. It's a good sign that we have vaccines. At the end of the day, if we're not ready to go, there's going to be a problem. And what you don't want is the dilemma of expediency before justice. You don't want to just work a case out so that you don't have to try it. You don't have that right to do that to your clients. And if that's what you're going to do, you probably shouldn't. You're in the wrong business. Your client is your priority. And as we enter into a more safe environment and we can try cases, we're going to be trying a lot of cases. And these judges are going to be working around the clock too, as well as prosecutors. So everybody in the system is going to be working hard. And that's just a fact of life. And anyone who tells you differently is not paying attention. So as I've always said in this business, the strong survive, and those of us who stay with it and who do the work and who will be there and make sure that their clients are well represented have something to be proud of. And if they're members of FACDL, I'm proud of them.
You know what? And thank you for doing what you did for the safety of those that are in the criminal justice system. I thank you, sir, for doing that on our behalf and the public's behalf, because it's not just persons that are in the criminal justice system. I mean, when they're there and they come out, they're going to be coming in contact with the public. So, Chris and April, if you want to add anything before I wrap up.
I just think it's a really important point for people to know how many people are still incarcerated right now, because we haven't had the ability to try cases in person. And for the lay person out there, I think that's an important point to make along the course of this.
Chris?
I would say the biggest battle that we have for the vaccine priority is convincing the public that a bunch of criminal defense attorneys should be moved up the priority list for getting the vaccine. I think if we can win that battle, the public relations war, I think we'll be all right. But I think there's going to be some pushback. But I'm all on board, and if there's anything I can do to help, I'd be happy to help.
Well, listen, you know what? Go, Mitch.
I agree 100%. I mean, that's why the letter I wrote, and with the help of with our committee members who are involved with FACDL, Terry South and Ron Kozlowski, what I wanted to say was, look, don't forget about us, because we're instrumental. We are indispensable to the system of justice that our country affords people who are accused of crime. So if we look at it and we realize this is important, we're not just protecting ourselves, we're protecting everyone who walks in those doors of that courthouse, and that's everybody. And just like Chris said, most people don't really identify with the criminal justice system until somebody in their lives are thrown into it. And you don't voluntarily enter the criminal justice system. You're arrested and put into it, or you choose to be in it because you're an attorney or a prosecutor or a judge or a clerk or a bailiff or somebody else. And so what we want to make sure is that everybody realizes we all are human beings in this. We're all citizens of the state of Florida. We want to do the right thing, and we want to get down to our business and dispense justice in a way that is constitutionally protected, but also that our health is protected. And then when we go home and then we go to our clubs and meet with our friends, we're not exposing people to COVID and that's an issue. So it's typical. Most people don't really care about what goes on in the criminal justice system until it touches their lives. Then it becomes a priority. So it's going to be hard. But what I said in the letter and what we crafted is, look, we don't expect to be placed on the top. We really don't. And nor would it be appropriate. I mean, we've got frontline workers. We've got first responders. I mean, police officers have got to get out in the public every day and deal with people on the street. They don't have a choice on what they do or who they come into contact with. So these are people that absolutely need to be vaccinated. Hospital workers, educators. I'm a firm believer in a public school system has got to be a safe place for our kids to go to school. And then when we get through all of those indispensable people to run our world and to participate in our society, we've got to look at the criminal justice system as being prioritized. Maybe not at the top, but certainly there somewhere. And so I just wanted to make sure that Governor DeSantis, as well as the other stakeholders who are going to be making these decisions, realize that criminal defense lawyers are indispensable. Without us, you're just processing people through a system, and that's not how our system works. Without us, nothing gets done. So it's an adversarial system. We're the adversaries. You got the prosecutors on the other side. You got the judges making decisions. And if everybody's not safe, we got a problem. So hopefully they'll act accordingly and we'll all be safer for it.
You know what? And Chris, even though it would be a public relations challenge if it were just criminal defense attorneys, but it's not. We're talking about jurors, judges, state attorneys. So maybe not so much of a challenge when people understand that jurors who have to go back home, they don't. Right. We want to protect them and the persons that they come in contact after they leave the courthouse. I'm done. Thanks. Yes.
Incarcerate. I'm sorry. How much does it cost to incarcerate someone for a day? That's something that I think you can talk about too in this conversation, is that we're keeping people incarcerated for a much longer time than is necessary. And how much is that costing the taxpayers?
Yeah. And April makes a really good point. Our tax dollars are going to keeping these people in a jail waiting to determine what's going to happen to them, and that's expensive. There's some estimates of $1,000 a day. Mm-hmm. When you put all the people in place and you put all the systems in place and all the hard costs as well as the cost of just keeping people locked up. I mean, it's expensive, and it's nothing that we should disregard. So and I think that our courts realize that we really do need to get this backlog resolved as soon as possible. And so vaccinations are really going to be key.
Oh, yeah, that is a really good point that you made there, April. And so I also want the viewers and those who will watch this broadcast after it ends, you can read the article that was published. I believe it was published today by the Jacksonville Daily Record, Jacksonville Record and Observer. You can read about the story about the letter, private practice attorney seeking COVID-19 vaccine priority. I hope, the viewers are able to see that. Let me see. Okay. And so that's a wrap for me. I don't have anything else to say. Thanks, Mitch, for taking out of your busy time. I know schedule. I know you were traveling when I called you. So thanks for just like without much advance notice, you came on to inform the public about this thing that you've done that's protecting us. It's a health safety issue. Thanks, Chris, for joining me as well. And my co-host, April Griffin, thank you so much. And everyone have a great evening. And thanks for those of you that tuned in to watch us.
Thank you, Haiti. Thank you, April. Have a nice night.
You too.